Hello and welcome to a new car review video on the channel, and welcome to the McLaren Artura. So this is my third time in a McLaren. The first time was in the Artura on track at Goodwood, which was an amazing experience. And I've also driven the McLaren GT as well, which again had another little sort of nuance of its character to it, in that it felt really comfortable and there was a slight whiff of Bentley about it. Which is amazing really, that McLaren can take this race-inspired configuration and turn it into a Continental Crossing GT car like the Bentley Continental GT. So first impressions of the Artura then is, just from a kind of a product design point of view, it feels like a very quality product in here. It's a beautiful interior, lots of lovely details with the Bowen Wilkins speakers, the Alcantara. The seat is really grippy in a very kind of race car type feel. Sorry, that sounds a little bit of a crude description, but it does feel a lovely mixture of really high quality and really modern, but still very much a race car for the road. So one of the interesting things when you start it up is there's no engine initially, because it starts up in hybrid mode, so you pull away with the electric motors, so it's a little while until the engine kicks in. But I thought that would probably be a bit more disconcerting than it is. But for me personally, I think people will complain sometimes that, oh, as a visceral kind of car, you want that engine sound straight away. But it's such an event being in here in terms of the quality of the interior and the feel of this feeling like a thoroughbred supercar, that's enough to take in without the engine going on for your first drive, especially when I'm not used to these roads around here and I'm also following a predetermined route. So I love this kind of vertical display panel that we've got here. It's very different to what you'd probably expect from most other cars. It's a little bit iPad feeling, but it's also got the control wheel on the side, which makes it feel like a high-end watch. I love the center console with the different drive buttons. It's very easy to work out. I think what my first impression was when the chap from McLaren was going through a lot of the details, there were a lot of things that are quite different to other cars that I've experienced. It's got some very kind of nuanced McLaren type things. The toggle dials at the front here that you do with your fingers, the positions of some of the switch gear and where the nose lift is and stuff like that. So it's very much got its own sort of vibe to it, but which was a bit intimidating at first, but I'm quite pleased to say that it's becoming quite intuitive quite quickly in terms of how to use it. The start button and the drive modes are like a lovely bit of theatre here. They're really easy to understand. The windscreen, or the dashboard, is quite low and the windscreen is quite deep, so you get a really good commanding view of the road. It's like being in a fighter jet to a certain extent. It does remind me of my old Lotus Elise Series 2, with that sort of amount of, or how, I shouldn't say sitting high up you feel, because that's the last thing that you want in a sports car. So you do feel low, but you feel as though the dashboard is really low as well. So visibility and feeling like you're in it rather than on it, it's just got that just right. I mentioned my Lotus Elise because the Elise is often used as a benchmark for sort of driving purity for road cars, and I think this Artura definitely has that feeling. It is helped by the fact that McLaren have stuck with a more conventional, better feeling, electrically assisted hydraulic setup, which I think feels brilliant. Also the fact that you've got the carbon tub chassis gives you that rigid, planted feel. It's a bit like the Lotus's aluminium extruded chassis, but obviously next level. The A-pillars really are quite far back, so it does give you that really broad panoramic view. They're quite thick, but because they're positioned quite far back, they're not really intrusive, and I don't feel as though they're interrupting my sort of field of vision, particularly when I'm at islands and things like that. So there's some nice, we've got the engine has come alive there, just as we went into national speed limit. I'm actually in comfort at the moment, and I'm using the toggle switches here. We've got electric mode, we've got comfort mode, and we've got sport mode as well, and also track mode too, and you can hear the note of the engine change, and also the instrument panel has changed with the graphics to kind of emphasise what gear I'm in, and also the speed has dropped down a little bit, so track mode is really emphasising the gear that I'm in. We've got these lovely paddles which kind of feel like carbon carbon fibre, but they've got like a chrome tip to them, which is really nice. I must say, it really does feel like quite an event to be in here. It feels very visceral. The engine note, I've got it in track mode at the moment, and the engine note right behind me sounds fantastic. The steering is really direct, positive. Sounds fantastic. Wow. Okay, stay within the speed limit. I'm loving the steering wheel as well. It's got a flat bottom. It's not quite round, and it's got lovely moulded places to put your hands at the side, like you would expect. But yeah, it's quite large as well. It's probably larger than I would expect it to be, but it doesn't feel too large. It just feels just right for the ratio of the steering. The actual graphical layout of the control panel is lovely. It's really modern looking. It's got a kind of a monochrome black, orange, which is obviously very McLaren, and then the graphics have got a lovely font as well. So I do like, I think McLaren have patented this, but these fingertip controls are lovely. They've got a lovely sort of matte, slightly rubberized feel to them. Got a great large rear view mirror as well, which has got a great view out the back. That's not something I would have expected from a mid-engine car. We've got a fantastic view of the rear. Yeah, this seat's really grippy. I think it's a carbon booking with Alcantara and leather on the front. But, it feels properly planted in it. It doesn't grip too much, so I can imagine going a long distance in this, even though it's a very sports-orientated carbon bucket. I love the lighting, the sort of illuminated red band that we've got in the door as well, and the theatre of opening up the sort of cantilevered doors is great as well. So I can feel the ride is slightly more comfortable in the comfort mode, and the exhaust note is a little bit quieter. So I'm just going to go down to electric. Okay. Now we're in pure electric mode. It is saying range 0, so I think somebody else has been using it today. So we can see the power and the boost that we've got when it goes into charge. So we've got a lovely circular dial that shows me power and boost when I'm actually using the electric power. And then when I take my foot off the brake, we get the charge side of the screen come on, which shows I'm going back into charge mode. But now it's switched back, it's put the engine back on because somebody else has used up all the charge. Okay, let's put it in sport. Sounds great. I think the gearbox has got really smooth changes. I can imagine just leaving it in auto, in comfort for on the road, and then it really does come alive, and I can switch it up into those other modes when I want to have a bit of a play at the weekend. And of course I've got the paddles as well. But it is nice when it's in comfort mode. The exhaust note is really knocked back, so you could really imagine using it every day. You could say that the engine, the lovely V6 hybrid, is great, but it's quite loud because obviously it's a performance-orientated car. But so if you were using it regularly on the commute with that noise, you might get a little bit fed up with it. But that's why we've got comfort mode, which just knocks the sound back that little bit. So we've just still got the responsiveness. We've got slightly more comfort in the chassis, but we can kind of be a lot more comfortable listening to our iTunes because we've got Apple CarPlay as well. I think another thing that's noticeable as well is that like my old Lotus Elise, it's really good fun and exciting to drive at low speed. Obviously the capabilities of this are outstanding in terms of the 0 to 60 time and the top end speed, but it's really fun and engaging even at low speed. You can really chuck it around and it feels comfortable and competent as well. So we're driving it in the UK and these roads are not in the best of condition, but it still feels in comfort mode. It feels really compliant. So some specs then, for those of you that like the specs. The Artura has a mid-mounted 3-litre twin turbocharged V6 with a dry sump. It's also got the hybrid powertrain with axial flux electric motor. And obviously it's rear-wheel drive, which is great for an enthusiast like myself. The transmission is an 8-speed SSG with paddle change. The chassis is the MCLAREN
carbon fibre monocoque with aluminium front and rear frames and chassis structures. It's got independent active dampers at the front, which have dual aluminium wishbones. At the rear, we have upper wishbones and lower multi-link setup, which is obviously race derived. The brakes are carbon ceramic, 390mm at the front and 380mm at the rear. The wheels are 19-inch at the front and 20-inch at the rear. You've got 235 section tyres at the front and 295 section tyres at the rear. The luggage capacity is 150 litres, as you can see here, and I'm pretty impressed with that. There's quite a good amount of luggage for a nice long weekend away. The battery charge time is about 2.5 hours up to 80% maximum capacity. So when you've got the power of the petrol and electricity working together, the Artura produces 691 brake horsepower, with the e-motor adding up to 93.7 brake horsepower and 225 newton meters of torque. So the total torque for the Artura is a 720 newton meters. You've got a top speed of 205 miles an hour. 0 to 62 time is achieved in 3 seconds. You've got 0 to 124 miles an hour in 8.3 seconds. You've got electric only maximum speed of 81 miles an hour, and electric only range is 19 miles, which is great for sort of starting up outside the house and not scaring the neighbours. And that's the spec. Exhaust note from the V6 also, you get this whistling as well, whether it's the turbocharger, but it sounds like a jet behind you, which is really fitting because you do feel like you're in a bit of a fighter jet. I think everything has a lovely solidity to it as well. It does feel really high quality. There's a nice mix of materials. It's very driver focused though, which is exactly what I want. You know, if somebody was in it, not really into cars, but they just wanted to be in a nice, quality, comfortable place, it's got that. But also for me, as a petrol head, it's also got that vibe and that driver focus feel to it. Okay, so let's just toggle through some modes. Let's go to track. Okay, so here we go. Let's just floor it within the speed limit. Wow, that's pretty impressive. So incredible pickup on the engine there, and the brakes are fantastic. Let's just stomp on the brakes. Okay, wow. So that's quite a visceral response to this car because I've not had it for very long. So it wasn't quite a one take, but I just wanted to try to express how this car makes me feel, and I really like it. I'm really impressed. Really sad I've got to head back to the PR guys at McLaren now and give it back because I'd really like to spend more time with this car. But yeah, first impressions, incredibly impressive, and a lovely mix of all the things that I like about cars. All the switchgear feels really high quality, and I love these kind of concave indicator stalks. Last year I drove it on the track, and of course the track is really smooth, so you can obviously feel the dynamics of the car, but you're never quite sure what it's going to be like when you drive it on the road. And it's not surprised me, but I'm really impressed with it, that it does have a great level of comfort, and even on these awful roads it seems like it's really usable. I think the other thing that I'm really impressed with is that how quick, as I might have mentioned earlier in the video, just how quickly I feel comfortable in it. I think initially when you approach a McLaren, it's quite an intimidating thing to look at. It's quite dynamic and exciting, and you bring a certain preconception to the car, but I'm really impressed at how now I'm just quite comfortable and quite happy driving it without having to think about it too much. I thought I'd be worried
about. I thought it would be like driving a glass slipper or something, and I'd be worried about it. But I've used the nose lift coming through the tunnel. But other than that, it's felt, you know, perfectly okay. It feels, I can see all the corners because of this big windscreen, as I mentioned, and it doesn't feel big. It feels quite a small car, so it's quite easy to thread through gaps and do U-turns and everything else. Yeah, so even now I'm doing a U-turn because I missed the media day circuit. But even doing this doesn't bother me. Even the change of camber or the curbs, I'm quite comfortable in spinning it around and throwing it around, which again is quite a surprise. And you can never get fed up with that. Wow. Until you hit 60, obviously. Very, very quickly. Okay, so that's about it for this video of my time with the McLaren Autora. I hope we're going to get it back in time and the PR guys won't be too upset with me because it's very hard to give back. But thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you get the chance, and hit the notification bell that will let you know when I produce new videos. Hopefully plenty more car review videos to come. But thanks again, and bye for now.
What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through.